Testing. Wow, I am back. There we go. There we go. All right. 3 people are here. Can you guys hear me fine? Guys and gals and everybody else. Children. See, live chat messages. Shayahan Masood. Hello, Shayahan Masood. Welcome to this new an improved edition of the Venezuelan live stream. So, as you probably know, I canceled. I turned off the other one. Hello, Med Sharif Dogyu. Where are y'all from? Masood, that sounds like Pakistani, Iranian. No, not Iranian. I don't know. I don't know that many different last names from that part of the world. Can you all hear me fine? I'm from Tunisia. Hello, Mr. Tunisia. Nice country. I'd like to live there. Sorry, not live there. Sorry, visit. I've been to Morocco though. The stream from yesterday, I had to take it off, and I'll explain to you all why in a second, but I can't be that explicit about it. Let's just see if we can round up a couple more people. I've introduced the super chat button, but that's optional, of course. Egypt. All right. We got a lot of North Africans here. Cool. Poland. Hello, Poland. You're my neighbor because I live in the Czech Republic right now. Do we have anybody else? We have 12 people so far. Hungary, another sort of neighbor. Budapest or Balaton, Lake Balaton. Hello from Peru. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Lima, I presume, or Cusco. Of course. Just America, Brazil. Geez, I look at my demographics and about half of my subscribers come from English-speaking countries like Canada, US, and UK, but this live stream seems to be dominated by South Americans and North Africans. Bien in Lima, all right? Cool. All right. Let's just wait for a few more people to add. I'll explain to everyone kind of what went down. And Brazil, of course. Hello, Brazil. Obrigado. Hello, Tutas. It's a special report. I'm wearing a different jumper. I know the quality of this camera is not the best, but I didn't know how to do a live stream with my GoPro. Okay, what do I think of Bolsonaro? I'm very indifferent to Bolsonaro because I feel like I don't really know the politics that well, even though I do think that the Workers' Party was extremely corrupt. That being said, other parties were corrupt, but I thought it if you look at the statistics from Brazilian nonprofits, it's true that a large proportion of the people indicted, I believe, in the corruption scandal were from the right-wing parties, but the Workers' Party actually got the most financial contributions and donations from the companies called into question. U.S. and Brazilian intervention in Venezuela. Brazilian, I don't see how. You have the Amazon, I don't know if any of you've been, but it's he scares people that could help him. Yeah. Assad, I think he's a liberal. I think obviously Syria is a proxy war. I can't really say, but I feel like Assad is he's a scary dude. I have a friend who knew a guy who knows Assad, and he has a bit of weird stories, but I don't like anecdotes. His documentaries say the truth about Venezuela, I presume, not Venezia. So Assad, I don't really like. The Assad, he seems illiberal to me, but obviously I'm not really a big fan of the other side too much, the Free Syrian Forces and whatnot, because I find them quite opaque. in what they're doing. All right, so I think we have 18 people. That's enough to to start out this live stream. I recognize a couple people from yesterday, a couple new faces. So for those people that were here yesterday and wondering why the live stream was cut off, why it was deleted, the reason was that konnichiwa. The reason was because yesterday there were security concerns regarding things. I don't want to get into it, and for that reason, I felt it safer to delete the live stream. I didn't really want to, but I had to because the Venezuelan government cracks down on freedom of speech a lot, and I didn't want to create a situation that would lead to unintended consequences and whatnot. So that being said, I had to delete the live stream. I'm not mentioning anything else, so I hope that answers everyone's questions about that, and we can move on, and we can sort of kind of rediscuss some of the things we talked about yesterday. Now, a couple of you yesterday have sent me questions, and I don't think I filled them out correctly. However, I am essentially getting an insider source from Venezuela at the moment who is going to provide some various insider sources that will provide information on the current situation in Venezuela. So this isn't just another YouTuber talking about a far-flung country that is far away, that is not relevant to them. This is very much relevant to me. And for that reason, I'm going to answer all the questions, right? So before I start, by the way, opinion on the support for Guaido. I have to say I support him because and I was going to get to that because the current came and they told me Chavez was not that good either. Yeah, Chavez was not that good. Usually Chavez was a bit better than Maduro, but the problem is Maduro inherited a lot of the flawed policies of Maduro. And so it was partially his fault. I would get into I'm going to get into detail, but why do you look like Che Guevara? You mean? Because both my parents are South American. maybe that's why. Even I come from the same continent. Watch out! Some South Americans are gonna be like, no, it's just America. It's not North or South. So yeah. U.S. Brazilian intervention. There could be U.S. intervention. I don't think there's gonna be a direct Brazilian intervention unless there's a coalition. There's some red behind. Yes, yeah, that's just my curtain because this room is why does Trudeau look like Castro? Exactly. Where's this coming from? So, opinion on the support for Guaido. I can answer that in full detail as I see that the live stream is kind of growing good like yesterday. So, let us start. I'll explain everything again. How we've gotten to the situation we've gotten in Venezuela from a person's perspective that actually lived there. Because as some of you know, I actually lived in Venezuela and grew up there. Both my parents are from the country, and I have a lot of family there. So, not to get into detail. So, Venezuela, as we all know, it's chugging. Venezuela was part of the same country as Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama. The Gran Colombia was liberated by Simón Bolívar, which everybody, even the opposition, adore. So he's universally a liberating figure. So Venezuela became independent under the first president, José Antonio Páez, which was a general of Bolívar. And from then on, Venezuela in the 19th century was run by caudillos or strongmen. Pretty much, Venezuela was an oligarchy of strong. Yes, I speak Spanish. Yeah, so Venezuela was an oligarchy throughout the 19th century, and then it continued being oligarchy until the 1930s with Juan Vicente Gomez, the sort of dictator in the 30s. He kind of looks like a South American version of Stalin, except he wasn't really left-wing or right-wing. He was just like, Anyway, so after the Second World War, there's a first democratic elections. I think Romulo Betancourt becomes the I wouldn't say centrist, but Romulo Betancourt, he becomes president, I believe. I'm not sure about this, but essentially this military general called Pérez Jiménez, Marcos Pérez Jiménez, he becomes the leader of the country, I believe 1948-49, with a triumvirate of two other leaders. He consolidates power. One of them, I think his name is Wolfgang. No, maybe it might be Wolfgang. So anyway, he consolidates power and becomes the president or dictator in 1952, I believe. And during this time, Venezuela experiences really rapid growth. It's the country with the highest valued currency in the world, second to the dollar, has nearly the same living standards as West Germany and Switzerland. And even Chavez, who's left-wing, has given some praise to Marcos Pérez Jiménez, which was more right-wing. So it's a bit of a paradox of a contradiction in ideology. People think, Venezuelans think left-wing and right-wing, but they really don't. Like a lot of people, like my grandpa, before, he viewed him very positively, even though my grandpa did support Chavez before he died. So it's a strange situation. So he was a president until about 1958, 1959, when a coup was launched against him, and he was exiled to, I believe, the Dominican Republic and then the United States. After this coup, essentially the main political parties in hiding kind of formed a union, and they signed a treaty called the Treaty of Punto Fijo, which laid out the democratic framework of Venezuela for the next 30 years. You had, I believe, COPEI, you had the ADECOS, you had... it wasn't an American-backed coup. It was organic because, like I said, he was a right-wing dictator who actually had friendly relations with the United States, but he also... The coup wasn't necessarily left-wing either. It was just a coup, Coups don't have to be, introduced by foreign powers. This is what a lot of people don't understand with South American politics. They always think that coups are necessarily completely foreign entities, and it's not the case. So they did the framework for the democracy in Venezuela with the Tratado de Punto Fijo, the Treaty of Punto Fijo, and what happened was that pretty much none of the political parties had absolute control of the government, but the constitution was quite consistent. The constitution, at least the framework of the government, didn't really change in those 30 years. So it was a corrupt democracy, sure, because all the parties were corrupt, but the framework and the institutions were actually kept quite consistently, right? So flash forward to 1967. By this point, Cuba had its revolution, and we all know how the Cuban Revolution started. Fidel Castro, it was kind of an illiberal democracy, but not as flawed as it is now, at least, and fractured. Cuba at this point had its revolution, and we remember that in Cuba, the way Fidel Castro and Raul Castro gained power is they took a yacht with like 70 people and went from Mexico to the coast of Cuba and pretty much fomented revolutionary support in an organic way. So in 1967, people don't realize this, but Cuba actually tried invading Venezuela in what is called the Machurucuto incident, right? This is a very famous incident in Venezuela. Cuban trained guerrillas, about 12 of them, landed with a yacht, with heavily armed, with a yacht in the coast of Venezuela. They were trained by Cuba, and but it was defeated. And the idea with the strategy was to foment... I think it was 12 combatants. Let me actually look. It's 12, but it's the same strategy. Yeah, it's about 12. They were Cuban trained. A dozen guerrillas landed in Venezuela at the beach of Machu Picchu. They landed about they landed about it's like the Bay of Pigs but in a smaller scale, and they were trying to foment support. They wanted to do like organic support. So Cuba did that, and Yacondo, like I said, the Machurucuto incident is like a very famous incident in Venezuela, and it was proven that they were Cuban-trained guerrillas. Cuba didn't invade directly, but they provided them training and weapons, the same way that Cuba's helped the FARC, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, as well. To deny that is just, I can't really. I'd have to give you articles and documents and history books, even from Venezuela, to prove the point. But anyway, the Venezuelan military, and Angola as well, the Venezuelan military defeated the insurgency very quickly and pretty much killed all of the guerrillas except two of them. Yeah, it was the Cold War, but Venezuela was a bit non-aligned because remember, the right-wing dictator had fallen, and this was a democratic process that was friendlier to the United States, but albeit they still had a degree of a non-alignment in their policy. So go to the 1970s with the OPEC crisis, and you can see in the World Bank website or any website like Trading Economics, you can see that the current account balance of the Venezuelan government actually started declining. I'll look at it right now, for example, current account balance Venezuela, and you can see, this is Trading Economics, well, this is actually not showing 1970. Oh wait, I think I might be government spending, maybe. I can't find the statistic right now. I might have to send it after, but essentially, Venezuela was starting to spend more than it was producing. And I believe we had a deficit for a while. I need to give that a World Bank. Oh no, wait, OECD maybe. Sorry, everybody. Current account balance of Venezuela. Let's see if I can find it. No, not in the OECD. It must be the World Bank. Okay, it might be the World Bank, everyone. Sorry about that. Okay, here. It's going to be the World Bank. Okay, so Venezuela. Because I did a video on this a couple of years ago. Okay, good. So, current account balance. I don't think it's the current account balance per GDP. Balance of payment statistics. So it started decreasing by 1974, and the OPEC crisis was 1974. Oil embargo, blah blah blah. So that actually caused like a current account balance where it went to negative 5.7 billion by 1978, and it went up, down, up, down, up, down, and there was a ton of instability. Now let's look at government spending in the World Bank, because I love the fact that the World Bank like updated their website. It's so much like cleaner. This is the general government final consumption expenditure of Venezuela. So here, percent of GDP. So the government was spending ton of stuff of money. I'm gonna send a link, I think, in the chat. Yeah, but the World Bank is an international institution, just like the United Nations. You know, they post quite transparent figures on all countries. You know, if you're gonna deny the World Bank, then you can look at other like Trading Economics if you want. You know, but it's just to show that the expenditure usually it uses data from government sources. You know, anyway. So the government was essentially starting to spend more percent of their GDP up until and then the government expenditure, final consumption expenditure percent of GDP started decreasing. Let me put if I could find normal spending. Sorry, everyone. Anyway, the whole point of the matter is the Venezuelan economy never necessarily didn't recover from the OPEC crisis in the 70s, and it started kind of collapsing. It became more oligarchic. The political parties, even though they competed, they were spending on like social programs, and also it has to do with the fact that oil prices fluctuated and whatnot. Not so much social programs, but a lot of it did go to corruption. The democratic framework set up by the Pact of Punto Fijo was corrupt. I'm happy to admit it, which is why Chavez comes into the story. So by the 80s, militant groups, revolutionary groups started popping up throughout Venezuela. Chavez created one, I believe, the Bolivarian Revolutionary Movement 200 or something like that. And he created this group in, I believe, 1980. And like I said, governments were getting more and more corrupt. But it was like small time corruption, but it was still corruption nonetheless, and it didn't alleviate poverty issues and whatnot. So go to 1989 and you have the Caracazo, which was mass protest because I believe the government didn't want to subsidize fuel anymore. Caracazo. That's the reason why, for example, my parents left the country. The riots began government's economic reforms and resulting increase in the price of gasoline and transportation. People don't realize that gasoline is pretty much a non-issue, like non-expense, not an expense in Venezuela. It takes, I said this in the last stream, it costs $1 to fill the tank of a Hummer, and it costs 25 cents to fill a Corolla in terms of Venezuelan purchasing power. All governments are somewhat corrupt. Yes, that's true. That is very true. All governments have a degree of corruption. But Venezuela did have higher corruption than in the West, but it wasn't excruciating. The police still had a bit of function, not only in Venezuela, in my country, yes. All governments have corruption, but the difference, at least in the West, is that if you drive down the street, police aren't going to actively stop you just to ask for money or to take things away from you and break the rules all the time. Occasionally, maybe, but it's rare. In Venezuela, what I'm trying to say, it's a common occurrence, which is why Venezuela ranks very extremely low, extremely high technically in the corruption perception index. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And I guess people don't realize how corrupt it is because they've never lived there and they've never seen it firsthand. But like I told you, my sister, for example, she was with her friend and a cop stopped them just for no reason. And the cop took away his phone from him, threatened him with jail time. There's so many stories that people have of that. But if you're Black in America, though, yeah, sure, there's like racial discrimination in the police force, but it's not to the same degree. That's not really corruption. That's like a policing problem. Is there a chance Venezuela to fix itself without foreign intervention? Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so, because the thing is with Venezuela, people also don't realize this. Venezuela is already losing nearly as many people per capita as like the Middle East, or it's more dangerous than Iraq or Afghanistan. So it's already at war zone levels, but it's still considered a peacetime country, which is why it doesn't get coverage. Legalized civil asset forfeiture. Yeah, of course. But like, But like I said, in Venezuela, corruption is insane. If you wanted to, you could bribe your way and get Venezuelan citizenship. Any of you people. What am I, a neocon? No, I'm a utilitarian. I'm a realist. Like, would I prefer 35,000 people dying a year because of instability, which is currently happen? Yeah, but we're not the Middle East, you see. Venezuelans are very against suicide, so you're not going to have suicide bombers. You don't have this religiosity to create like a caliphate. Like, what you might have like guerrillas in the forest, but 90% of the population lives on the coast. So like it's nowhere near the Middle East. That's why Panama, even Chile and like Grenada, their interventions occurred overnight. Hello, Mr. Syrian Christian guy. So we don't have the same fundamental ethnic cleavages as the Middle East. Yes, in America, you could technically do the same, but it's not a bribe. It's called investing, and it usually costs a couple $100,000, and there's a lot of paperwork involved. I'm saying in Venezuela, you could literally you could skip the red tape. Even if you don't fulfill the criteria, you could still get away with it. So you see, you could pay like $150, maybe $1,000, and you'll get citizenship, which it's people against the government. Yeah. Well, yeah. So what I'm trying to say is in the West, you have corruption, but usually it's very top level corruption. It's not like there's not much corruption, at least to the same extent as in South America, in like the police force, in local governments and stuff. It's just a lot more transparent. Even with all these corruption scandals you see on the news and stuff. Whereas in Venezuela, it's permeated every single institution. And like I said, that's the reason why political support started fomenting for Chavez. I will admit that, because the corruption started gaining traction. It started gaining traction. So 1989, you have the Caracazo because the government didn't want to subsidize fuel anymore, even though it's extremely cheap, but still, I understand why. Governments have never been able to do that, not even Maduro. And this was under the president Carlos Andrés Pérez, who was corrupt. I'll admit that again. So after the coup, after the Caracazo, my parents left the country. After the Caracazo, Chavez, I'm not really convinced about your propaganda on intervention. But let me tell you this, Yacondo. Do you not think Russia and China and Cuba are intervening in Venezuela as well? Do you really not think that? Like, you have the Machurucuto incident in 1967. You have the Plan Barrio Dentro, where Cuba sends doctors for oil in Venezuela. You have the FARC guerrilla operating within Venezuelan land. Like, Venezuela and Ecuador nearly went to war with Colombia because it killed the second in command of the FARC 1 kilometer in Ecuadorian territory, which was technically a violation of sovereignty, but like still, like, we're talking about the commander of a group that's been planting landmines and has caused civilian deaths in Colombia. Are people I know you're talking about Venezuela here, but I'd love to get your opinion on the Syrian civil war. Like I said, Syria, I'm really iffy on it because to me it seems more apparent that it's a proxy war, but I don't really like Assad. I wish it had a genuine democracy, but I was very skeptical of the Free Syrian Forces as well because it's a very loosely based coalition that seems very fragmented and seems ripe with Islamic extremism in its fringes. So I've been very skeptical to choose sides in the Syrian civil war. Are people starving in mass in Venezuela? I would say yes. I have firsthand accounts of people eating garbage, and the zoos are empty. It's very true because there are no animals anymore because people ate them. Already owns oil production. Maduro give it in exchange of money to pay for troops. Yes, China has the Road and Belts initiative, which pretty much, if Maduro defaults on his loans or can't pay them, China has the right to seize assets. You know, that is a form of imperialism, but I don't know why people aren't I don't know why people don't consider soft power, soft economic power as a form of imperialism. You know, Russian jet landed a few days ago that hauled away like 10 to 20% of Russia's gold reserves as a collateral for not paying for for debt. So yes, Cuba is doing imperialism. I'm not denying that the U.S. has interest in this game, but we have to see this eye for eye. All parties have something at stake for this game, for this situation. You know, Cuba has been eyeing Venezuela for a very long time. It's been part of their foreign policy. Like I said, with the invasion, with the sending Cuban doctors, with their association to the FARC. There is evidence that the plane landed. It came from Moscow directly to Maiquetía. There's pictures of it. I'll give evidence right now. Russian plane. Here. I'm using... Because, I mean, the Russians did that in the Spanish Civil War. Wait. See, in a speech to Parliament, member Jose Guerra, he had heard from the Central Bank of Venezuela officials that a Russian plane was meant to transport at least 20 tons of gold out of the country. Here. Sorry, I haven't... Oh, Jesus Christ, is fucking Hello. I'm convinced that you are a neocon. You can be convinced for whatever. I don't really care. I don't really support every war that the U.S. does. And I don't support every... And, like, I understand Russian intervention. I'm just a realist. War transformed the popular upside against Islamic insurgency. Yeah, I could see that. Who will pull Venezuela into their sphere after country collapse? I'm not sure, but like I said, this idea that South American countries are in like little spheres of influence, it's a bit cliche, and I feel like people play too much Victoria 2 to think that, you know, South America is categorized into these little teams. Like, power in South America is a lot more localized than in the Middle East. I would argue, you know, the power is much more localized, to the point where, like, I've just never seen that. You're a professional academic. You seem to be doing a lot of your actual footwork. I'm not a professional academic. I did it is a great game. I did a master's, sort of a master's 1 in Europe, the first year of master's in politics and philosophy in Edinburgh, Scotland. But I teach at the university right now. I teach English though. But I'm sort of gearing toward like more Russian research. I'd love to create my own think tank or non-governmental organization on Russian and Eastern European research. Is Maduro responsible for the crisis? I think yes, but a lot of the blame is also on Chavez for long-term consequences. Will be eventually be siding with someone to build up a country now. Yeah, maybe. Has its own accords between countries. Yeah, South America has like Mercosur, which is a trading bloc. You know, like South American countries, like people act like they have like that much foreign intervention in them. Colombia maybe a little bit, but it's like it would, if the U.S. intervenes, it could be the same thing as the U.S. replacing China and Russia. I completely agree with you, but the problem is a lot of the basic market forces will be reintroduced and recalibrate the economy. Obviously, the cutoff is we have to be careful to not let Venezuelan sovereignty be curtailed by U.S. companies. I completely agree with that. In a way, I'm a bit like a nationalist for Venezuela, which is a shared tenet of Bolivarian ideology, whatever you call it. But we don't have the supply and demand market forces in Venezuela right now because of the price controls. We have too much expropriation, that even of small like bakeries, not even large scale businesses. We have centralization of food distribution, currency controls. It's just a recipe for disaster. The fall of oil actually occurred about 1 year after the economy started to contract. And people don't realize this, but the Venezuelan economy was already facing slight shortages in milk. I saw it as in person. We're facing slight shortages of milk by 2008, 2007. So people think that shortages are recent, but they're not as recent as you think. Of course, it's always sad that people say Russians did so or so. It's Putin and Putin's mafia. That's why I like studying Russian history, because I think Russians are extremely nice people. I think Russians are extremely nice people, but I think Russia has had a sad history full of autocracy, no matter if it was from the Soviet Union, Putin, or the Tsars. And it makes me a bit sad that people, especially in the West, attack Russia's character without understanding that, I'm not saying that Russians don't know any more better, but it's a difficult situation because it has autocracy. So kudos, power to the Russians. I don't know. Let me see. Do I have a degree in Russian history? No, I do not, but I did Russian politics in university. My dissertation was on terrorism in Chechnya, which is why I did that video on Chechnya and Ingushetia. So I studied a course in Russian politics in university. But so my degree is in political science and philosophy. However, I did do courses on European history, and I also did courses on history of Christianity, so a bit of theology. But in high school, I did AP European history, and I got one of the top scores in the country. And they even my essay. If any of you would like to look at my essay and you're studying AP European history, you can look on the College Board, year 2012. I think it's a free answer question. What do you think of this graph? Man, that website looks like super rinky-dinky. Living long. So is like green like country? Sorry, is purple countries like? I don't know if I buy this, because first of all, Venezuela has one of the highest murder rates in the world, so that brings down life expectancy, and due to the shortages, it's even lower. Yakondo. So I don't think that's really credible. I'd have to cross-reference it. Life expectancy, Venezuela. You might be right though. In Colombia, it's slightly, but this is from 2016. It's slightly higher than Colombia. ¿Qué pasa, epa? So what does LeftTube have wrong with Venezuela? They don't realize that after the Caracazo in 1992, Chavez attempted a coup, and his followers attempted another coup right after. So he attempted 2 coups. So people are calling this an American coup without realizing that the government in power tried to get into power through a coup by itself. And they're aligned with governments that have tried doing similar things in Venezuela, like the Machurucuto incident in 1967. Thank you, Yakondo. I'm always ready to concede. (2016) though, malnutrition, death rates, and whatnot. But the thing is, the Venezuelan shortages have really gotten bad in the past 2 years. But that's, like I said, that's not factoring like murder and whatnot. Coups and a coup, yeah. But yeah, you're right, Yakondo. But that's lagging. That makes sense. So Sure, I'll answer the question in a second. So if you go to 1990, late 90s, Chavez is arrested, and the president, Rafael Caldera, I think that's his name. Yes, Rafael Caldera. He gives him amnesty, and lets Chavez run the elections. I mean, in 1998. And he runs against the guy that used to be in his revolutionary thing. So it wasn't really an election where he was running against the actual other parties. Yeah, Caldera la cagó. That's true. It disproves your anecdotal evidence about people starving like South Sudan. I never said people were starving like South Sudan. I said people are eating out of garbage cans. And that is from 2016. So that doesn't factor in the past 2 to 3 years where the crisis has really proliferated. Yeah, Kondo. So 2016, I would have conceded that, sure, but 2016, the shortages didn't reach the level that they're reaching now. And you have to consider this. 5 million Venezuelans have left the country. You know, there's a mass exodus. So Chavez gains power in 1998. He starts overhauling the Constitution. He founds, I think, the Fifth Republic or whatever. Do you have numbers on it? I might actually. I have the Transparency International data right here. Wait, cancel. I don't want to open that. So you guys have to bear with me. There's a lot of comments. Poverty reduction in Venezuela. What's the conclusion out of that paper? Because, wait. Such as access to healthcare and education. Yes, it's true that Chavez reduced the poverty, but it was a very temporary fix because he instituted long-term policies that eventually started buckling down. For example, if you look at the current account balance, he started ramping up spending 2003. Yes, Aljaz, but if you look, he started increasing spending by 2003, after the coup against him that was partially supported by the United States. And that ruined the current account balance, which means that more money was leaving the country than was staying in the country. And here's a report of poverty reduction. And that paper is from 2008. Chavez, the thing is, he created a lot of the institutions. People don't realize this, but Maduro was in Chavez's government already. I would be willing to debate a Marxist-Leninist YouTuber, especially the Finnish Bolshevik, because like I said, I have like inside perspective. Like people don't realize that paper that you sent, the reduction of poverty with the healthcare, that paper doesn't realize that the quality of the free healthcare that was provided in Venezuela was abysmal, is abysmal. You had the Plan Barrio Adentro, which had, okay, I look up on the graph of Venezuelan GDP, but I'm talking about the current account balance, which correlates with employment levels and which correlates with output levels. I have a video on this in YouTube if anybody wants to see my hard data. I'm just not going to sit around and like show it here because like it's going to make the live stream slow. But if you guys want to see it, I have it on my channel. Chavez, as you know, there was a worker strike in PDVSA, the state-owned oil company. He pretty much purged it. Then after you had the coup against him. Yes, it's a reduction in the unemployment level, but like I said, these were short-term benefits, but they had long-term implications because, like I said, the current account balance didn't have equilibrium. Sorry, guys. So by Yeah, I'm sorry for ugh. So anyway, by the late 2000s, Chavez started centralizing control of food distribution through things like Mercal and Pedeval. London has stolen the gold reserves of the Venezuelan people. No, they're just not letting him have it. You know, you could say the Russians did the same by landing that plane and hauling gold as well, or the Chinese with their ridiculous loans. Yeah, because I have a personal grasp, but the difficulty with explaining a personal grasp is that it's like talking about war and actually participating in war. When you participate in war, at least it gives you a very unique perspective that changes things. You know, when we actually encounter the experience and without analyzing it from an outsider's perspective, a lot of people, you know, like the Finnish Bolshevik, Bad Mouse, they come from the UK, Finland, these countries that rank very low in corruption and have things that we take granted for, like freedom of speech. Like, I had to delete my live stream yesterday in fear for due to security reasons, because of fear for consequences. I'm just trying to point that out to everybody. That's what I feel like some of the people in the chat don't understand, that I actually had to do that for a reason. And what economically? People are allowed by surface level success with no understanding of the deeper levels. Yeah, because like I said, the government did a lot of social spending. Like, I'm not saying that Chavez's government was completely wrong in certain things. GDP should decline and poverty and unemployment should rise, or has risen in the last. Well, poverty and unemployment have risen in the past few years. It decreased under Chavez's few years, because you don't realize that obviously when you do a lot of social spending, it might have short-term benefits, but the longer term, it's not sustainable in the long term, especially since the gasoline is subsidized in Venezuela. The country's budget, like in Venezuela, I don't think GDP is completely useless for everything, but I'm talking about the current account balance, sort of like a country's cash flow, how much money goes into a country, how much leaves a country, and how much money goes into a government and how much leaves a government. That's how I look at things, you know. So Chavez also started expropriating a lot of property. For example, purchasing power parity is a bit difficult, because Venezuela sells a lot of its oil and buys a lot of its products from the United States. So you also need it doesn't have an internal market that really warrants purchasing power parity, because it has to convert its currency to buy with dollars. So nominal might be a better approach. I saw somewhere that not only they employed more than what they could pay, as they had higher wages than what they could pay. I haven't really seen much of the Caspian Report. I think the Caspian Report is a good YouTuber. He analyzes things, but like I said, he analyzes things that lack a certain perspective. Like, I don't want to say many details, but I know people that are. I have links to both camps and high up. So I kind of have that internal perspective of like the power struggles happening. That's my girlfriend. Sorry, she's coughing. She's sick. But anyway, so in 2007, the largest television channel in the country that was independent, called RCTV, was expropriated. Well, the license was not renewed by the Venezuelan government, and many people protested because this was a sign of clamping down on dissent, right? Yeah, I know. Like, Jimmy Dore's video was quite. I'm not saying So they expropriated RCTV, and then Chavez tried to do this really huge amendment that would give him like really outstanding presidential powers. And it was actually voted against. So Venezuelan people, as early as 2007, actually voted against Chavez's constitutional amendment that would make him undisputed overlord of the country. So people are arguing that the Venezuelans have always supported him. It's not the case. Look at the 2007 amendment. Now we go to 2009 and 2010. I was in Venezuela during this time. You had the Plan Barrio Dentro, which had Cuban doctors coming into Venezuela. In exchange, Venezuela would send oil or whatever. But these places were all located in local barrios or favelas, because I lived in one. But they only provided very, very basic services and dental services and whatnot. They were cool, nice people. I met Cubans from Cuba, but yes, the cough sounds tad. Don't say that. Anyway, so people, like I said, the writer of that report saying that, oh, Venezuelans got benefits of healthcare and whatnot that aren't counted through income. Yes, they got healthcare, but it was really poorly constructed. It was only like dental care and very, very, very limited healthcare located in each barrio. If you needed like a surgery, if you needed something serious, even to a checkup from a doctor, you had to go to a big hospital like Pérez Carreño, which is the biggest hospital in Western Caracas. What have I heard about the quality of life in Cuba? Honestly, I didn't really talk politics with Cuban doctors. I don't remember them really particularly praising Castro or saying anything nice, but I don't really remember us talking about politics. Like, they were our neighbors. We'd go downstairs and they'd have a beer with my dad or whatever, and we'd all just chat and have a good time. We weren't focused on that. But like what I'm saying is, for the social spending, people think the benefits were like amazing, that you could have surgeries, and no, you just had dental care. So I visited this major hospital, the Pérez Carreño, which is probably the largest public hospital in Caracas' western part, which is called La Pastora. And it was the most appalling experience I've ever had in a hospital in my life. I'm being very genuine when I say that. People were waiting right outside of the entrance, covered in blood and something. It was chaotic. It was a mess. Kids coming in, being shot in the chest. And I was like, and they had to do a simple procedure to my grandpa. He had a clogged artery, and they just had to unclog it, right? They had to do a simple procedure on my grandpa, and they delayed it by months and months and months and months and months until he died from heart surgery, because they were forced to do heart surgery on him, and he died. So that's a very direct implication, because my grandpa was poor. People call me middle class because I live in the Czech Republic, but my grandpa was very, 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 very poor. I'm not saying that because the Cubans didn't construct hospitals in every village, it wasn't good enough. My point is, instead of focusing on these rinky-dinky, like local hospitals that provide basic dental and not even basic GP services, how about we renovate our infrastructure in our actual hospitals? Here in Portugal, they left an old lady die in front of the hospital because only an ambulance could pick her up. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in the West, but it happens way less. Like there's a chaos in the delay, because, like, for example, it was a very simple treatment that went really, really wrong. And like I said, Venezuelan hospitals, I've been to hospitals in Europe, in the United States. The hospitals in Venezuela, it forces people to use private hospitals that are more expensive. Once I got gastritis and I couldn't be taken to a private hospital because we didn't have enough money, but I didn't go to the public hospital either because it's like a death sentence to you or something. Yeah, they may be collapsing, but I'm telling you honestly, like, I live in Czech Republic. I've never actually been to the hospital here, so I couldn't judge, but seeing from how society works here, it's not at the same scale because, like I said, in Venezuela, about 30,000 people get murdered every year, and countless more people get wounded. Like one of my neighbors, he would open his stomach and he had 6 bullet wounds and stuff, and stuff. So like that's testimony that like the resources were strained, you know. Yeah, I mean, here public hospitals are just slow. The private ones, they can be slow, but they're all right. European hospitals are fine because like they're slow, but they have the infrastructure, the technology there. You know. So if we move on, I'm not trying to make this personal or anecdotal. I'm just trying to tell you the actual perspective. Like for example, I got sick a lot in that country. I got dengue, which is nearly malaria. Like I nearly got like a malaria kind of disease in the country, which I could have died from gastritis and stuff. And I always had to use private medical practice because public hospitals, you're just asking to get an infection or whatever. European hospitals are better than U.S. hospital. I would say that. Yeah. Mind if I come and share your place and stay there? Okay, so by 2010, there were still shortages. You could get by, but it was still I left because the crime rate was rising way too much. There was a very huge increase, a very large increase in the crime rate when Chavez entered power. Before Chavez entered power, like 4,000 people were murdered. To give you perspective, in the Czech Republic, only 64 people have been murdered. Alani, I wouldn't say, because remember, the productivity per acre of agriculture in the Soviet Union didn't reach 1913 levels until the late 50s. So I don't know if that's true. Yeah, I think I would have to agree. I don't like Tsarist Russia, but I'd have to agree with Igor. Like the hectare productivity didn't reach. I base that off of sources, my books. I don't know. Anyway, let's not get into that, children. You are also ignoring that IRC in real terms, the economy that grew the most in the period was okay. I think you guys are talking about something else. Anyway, so I left Venezuela in 2010. I lived in poor neighborhood for time, so I have a perspective of a poor person, at least temporarily, because it's where my part of my family comes from. So I don't want people to think that I'm like, I've lived in the upper class in Venezuela too. I'll be very transparent about that. But I don't want people to get the perception that I just have like a rich kid's perspective, right? So 2010, I left. Family stayed there, and I've kind of I've kept track with the situation. Chavez died in 2013. All right, that's fine. Chavez died in 2013. Maduro became president. Then he had an election. He was elected, and whatnot. And you guys are distracting me. So he was elected. And in 2015, I remember I was working in a senator's office in the United States. Again, saying this for transparency. I was an intern. I was actually writing the press releases. And 2015 was the election for the parliament in Venezuela, the National Assembly, and they got an absolute majority. The opposition got an absolute majority, and what Maduro tried to do was try to dissolve it, like Yeltsin kind of did in 1993, and he created a mirror parliament that was mainly controlled by the PSUV, the Socialist Party of Venezuela, in order to strip the legislative power of the opposition because it controlled think about it like this. I told you, imagine if Trump decided to dissolve the House of Representatives just because the Democrats have control of it. How do you think people would feel? You know? So that's the perspective of it. So yeah, and also to give you guys perspective, I actually did like Chavez at one point. When I was very 12, 11 years old, I actually went to rallies of Chavez. So again, I don't have that position that I've always been against him. That's why I'm doing this, because I think I have a very unique position. Okay? So he tried to dissolve the parliament. That didn't work because of protests, but he kind of did it anyway because he controlled the Supreme Court. So Maduro, what he did next, he called a snap election in, I think, 2018. And he did it in the most politically convenient time, because by that point, he had arrested the main opposition leader, Leopoldo Lopez, and he put him in house arrest, so he couldn't run. And he also barred Henry Caprile, which was the man that he ran against in 2013, from participating in political process. So in a nutshell, Maduro literally barred all his political opponents, his real political opponents, from participating in elections, which is why he called the 2018 snap election, in which one of his ex-colleagues, Henry Falcón, ran for office. Does anybody realize why this is a problem and why people like Guaido called this a sham election? Exactly. It is literally Tropico. People don't realize this, but Venezuela is a macrocosm of Tropico. So that's what happened in Venezuela. All the political opponents were barred from elections, Maduro tried dissolving parliament to install his own parliament, and he called the snap election, in which he ran against pretty much a buddy of his, an old buddy of his, of Chavez as well. So where Guaido comes into the picture is that he was sworn in as the president of the National Assembly, and he used his constitutional authority, which some people dispute, to be the temporary president of Venezuela. So that's how the situation comes about. So Juan Guaido, he doesn't have extreme legitimacy, but what I'm trying to argue is that Maduro has even less legitimacy because of how he's acted as a president. He tried dissolving institutions that have been part of the Venezuelan system for decades. He's arrested political opponents, mimicking the purges of Stalin in the 1930s, and he called a snap election because it was the most convenient time for him. So I've realized people are arguing about Eastern and Western Europeans and not really listening to me. So does anybody have questions? Do you think Guaido would be able to? I think he would be able to fix the economy. I don't know. I don't think so. He would be able to improve it slightly, but I don't know if he's going to do an outright fix, because, like I said, Venezuela has been plagued with corruption since the 70s. So I'm not going to be one of those people that places all their hope in Guaido, But he will reintroduce the market mechanism of supply and demand. He'll cut I don't know if he's going to cut the currency controls, because Venezuela's always had currency controls. But he'll stop the expropriations. Maybe he'll privatize some of those. He'll return those companies to some owners, and that might help alleviate pressures. Wait, okay. Okay. I'd like for you to do a point by point, if you haven't already, on LeftTube. Okay. LeftTube, I have a very big problem with LeftTube, and the same thing that I have with RightTube, because literally I can write down every single point that you guys believe in, and it's like a monolith. I feel like every single left-wing YouTuber believes nearly the same crap, same as the right-wingers, and I'm like, what the heck? Are people losing their agency to think for themselves? And Okay. How much of Venezuela's industry were nationalized? I think it's like 30 or 40%. The thing is, it's not necessarily that they nationalized as well. It's that they've instituted price controls, which is a kind of a way of nationalizing, and also they've centralized distribution of goods and services. Chavez is the Lenin of Venezuela, and Maduro is the Stalin in a way, maybe. U.S. does have sanctions, but people don't realize that the sanctions were directed at individuals in the government. They weren't directed at Venezuelan exports on oil. The U.S. is heavily dependent on Venezuelan oil because it's cheaper than Saudi oil, and the U.S. has refineries geared toward refining Venezuelan oil. So the sanctions were against Venezuelan individuals. Like, for fuck's sake, guys, like, 2 nephews of Maduro were caught smuggling cocaine. There's even video of them literally testing out cocaine. And they were 2 nephews of Maduro. And Maduro's like, no, it's Washington kidnapping them. You think external influence from other states is justified then? Yes, I do. As a utilitarian. I don't want it to end up where Venezuela gets puppeted by anybody, be it the United States, be it Russia, China, whatever. Yes, left tube and right tube are filled with people who can't think for themselves. I think it more and more. I don't want to call names, but you know what? I am. The Finnish Bolshevik is one of them. That RT reporter, the Ginger, is another one. Literally, like, the Bad Mouse, Mexi, all those people, they literally, like, I can just, like, it's amazing. I could pro-Palestinian. There's nothing wrong with 2-state solution, whatever. Pro-Palestinian, anti-US, pro-Venezuelan, generally pro-Russian, like the views are, it's a monolith. Like, it's crazy. It scares me. Believe what you want, Mr. Wealthy Western Man. I don't know if you're talking about me, but I did actually stand in rationing lines in Venezuela. I've already mentioned this with Mercal. Me and my family at the time, we actually had to do multiple lines and pretend we didn't know each other so we could actually get more things because they only gave a certain amount to families. Of course, you could buy from the private supermarkets, but this was generally cheaper. Yeah, some Nazis tell me that I'm paid off by the Israeli government, and lefties will say that I'm paid off by the CIA. I'm just a 24-year-old doing YouTube videos and reading books, enjoying my life. The most the CIA will pay me is, like, I don't know, like a kudos or something. God, when I was working in my internship in the Senate, I didn't even get paid, guys. Come on. Can you images and videos as well as Venezuela, $1 Soros based CIA plan? Look, I'll tell you guys something. I did my dissertation on Chechnya and Ingushetia, and I had a lot of people say, "Oh, what? Are you working for the British government? Why are you doing this university thesis on us? Are you some kind of CIA, British MI6 spy?" And I'm like, I am a 24-year-old nerd. I don't care. Because I live the good life. Any other questions? Because James Bond, thank you. Here's some questions that I can answer. Do people eat dogs? This was from yesterday. I have an inside source that says they've only seen it in pictures, but people have been eating from trash cans and stuff. I do need a bit of a change of hair, but I'm trying to grow it out like Jon Snow and stuff. Where is the Finnish Bolshevik factually wrong? I mean, I don't like him. He's a pedo and he defends the SU and selling way too much. The Holodomor, the thing with the Holodomor, I've done a video on this. The reason he's wrong with the Holodomor is the fact that the Holodomor, it's disputed whether it was specifically targeted toward Ukrainians. I can attest to that. I don't buy the line that Stalin just did it to kill Ukrainians for their past descent in the Russian Civil War. However, I do think that Stalin was trying to stamp out the peasantry in favor of people in the cities. And this was very calculated with the internal passport regime that existed in the Soviet Union at the time, as well as the fact that Stalin demanded over 40% of the produce made in the Kavkaz and the peasant commune. Well, the Kavkaz are the peasant lands and stuff. Plus another 15%, plus another 10 to 20% from machine tractor stations in order to lease machinery. That's what people don't understand. Yeah, exactly. The Holodomor was a class genocide. It wasn't an ethnic genocide because you had similar situation where million of Kazakhs were killed. So I don't like the Holodomor label. I mean, I use it, but I don't like it because usually it insinuates that the Ukrainians were the only people suffering. No, the Sovkhoz were state farms. I'm talking about the Kavkaz. Sorry, kolkhoz. That's what I'm trying to say. The kolkhoz. My Russian is not that good, you know. So yeah, you know, city people didn't get the effects of the. No, I don't think it's morally better either. You know, if it's mass murder is mass murder. Yes, people weren't really allowed to leave the countryside easily in the Soviet Union, at least in Stalin's time. Yes, and that's true. The Soviet Union did do ethnic cleansing of the North Caucasians, and this created the situation where you have the Chechen War in the War of Independence in the 1990s. People don't realize this, but Stalin deported hundreds of thousands of Caucasians that died along the way, and they deported Volga Germans to Kazakhstan, where they created inter-ethnic conflict between the Kazakhs, Volga Germans, and the North Caucasian peoples. Yes, but Alani, you know what would save the cities a bit more if the government didn't require such high quotas for grain. 40% of grain was required, sometimes even higher, plus to pay leases for machine tractor stations. People don't realize that producing grain in Russia had costs. The government had centralized machine tractor stations where people had to pretty much rent machinery that was pretty much controlled by the government, you know? Yeah, Stalin definitely knew. Yes, there were some people collaborating with the Nazis, but again, a lot more people fought in the Red Army, you know? You had the 1942 rebellion in the Caucasus, but it was minuscule compared to the contribution that North Caucasian people gave to defending Russia. Venezuelan is not victim of a plot of the U.S. I think this is much more organic than the 2002 coup, which, by the way, nearly worked, but it only failed because the opposition was fragmented. If it was so powerful, then they wouldn't fragmented. Do you all mind if I use the restroom very, very quickly? It's been an hour and a half. Well, it's been an hour and 13 minutes, but please do not leave. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Back in 2 seconds. Woohoo! All right, that was fast. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I don't have one of those like standby monitors, standby screen. This is my third live stream technically, so there's that. All right, so are there any other questions? It can be pertaining to anything. It's a kind of a free-for-all now. We got heated debates happening. We got a guy that just said 1488. Hello, Mr. Nazi. Welcome to the chat. Actually, not hearing your voice. Let's check. Someone call his girlfriend what? Ayatollah Khomeini was a hero to the proletariat. Oh my God, this is becoming a death match, guys. People say Soviet Union isn't socialist. Your thoughts on that? Blitz of the Reich. I think it is, because people don't realize the historical materialist perspective of Marxism, that you have the evolutionary stages, and like people tend to think of I view socialism as the attempt to kind of achieve communism, to go away from the hurdle of capitalism and to attempt to achieve a communism. Socialism to me is the means of attaining the final product, So I find that strange. Opinion on Hungary. I mean, standing against EU and becoming Orban. I don't know much about Hungarian politics. I couldn't really answer that with I'm not really pro EU, even though I've benefited from the EU in certain ways. I like the idea of the free movement of labor, but I feel the EU is quite a behemoth, a bureaucratic behemoth. Thoughts on Rojava? The Kurds are left wing, but I actually like the Kurds. I have solidarity for Kurdish autonomy. So I guess the Kurds, I found them okay. The line between left wing and right wing is very blurred. I completely agree, because there are left wingers and right wingers who accuse other left wingers and right wingers of being not left or right wing enough. Russia has its interests in Venezuela, doesn't care about political ideologies. I completely agree. And that's why I'm trying to explain to people that this isn't an ideological mess. This is just a geopolitical mess and whatnot. Good evening, Memtem. Radical centrism. Let me see. I never really heard of that. I guess I could be called a radical centrist. Maybe that might be a good term. I don't really know what I am. What I am. What political side are you on? Classical liberal or something else? Honestly, I hate political labels. I'm just me. To be honest, like the weather conditions, but Alani, but honestly, famines are caused by political miscalculations. I was a farmer. It's not like even under the worst weather conditions, like you can still manage to grow things, if you're provided incentives and if you could do things correctly, like it's not like, oh, East Story is in the house. Why did you move to the Czech Republic? To be closer to you, baby. I don't know if everybody's noticed this, but me and E-Story have known each other since we both had 200 subscribers, and I'll be honest, I'm a bit jelly at his viralness. So we've known each other actually since 200 subscribers each, and stuff. Yes, I did say I'm a social democrat, but like I said, I kind of use labels because that's kind of how people sympathize with me and stuff. He is in Estonia, yeah. By the way, shout out to E-Story. Aren't you gonna? Yeah, we might be lovers. I don't know. I don't know if he'll say that. Admits to emotionally manipulating his audience. Well, not really. I'm just saying that I'm social democrat, but I don't really like using labels as much. I'm an anti-positivist, but I agree with social programs, but I also agree with the free market. So that kind of sounds like a social democrat, but you know, I just don't like using labels. I don't like labeling myself as something. Brexit, for or against? For it, I would say, but I don't agree with all the Brexit arguments, like stopping immigration and whatnot. I'm more about autonomy, and also I think the EU is quite a behemoth and whatnot, and I think it's arrogant. What are you seeing right now? Our imported communists from. What's your opinion on the migrant crisis? Which migrant crisis? Are you talking about the European migrant crisis or the Venezuelan migrant crisis? Explain why internet research industry bodies and employing the same tactic using calling anyone not supporting them fascists. People get radicalized, man. Like, what can I say? Like, I used to be radicalized to the left and to the right at one point. When you're radicalized, you have a very sharp perspective of them versus us, and it's really hard to crack that shell. You either have to go through like a life-changing experience to change your opinion, or you have to be exposed sufficiently to dissenting opinions, you know? So I hope that answers. When you were farming, did you have access to post-green revolution fertilizer with medieval techniques? Well, I was actually doing organic farming, so I wasn't using fertilizers at all. But I was doing industrial farming as well. I actually farmed for communists, but I'm not going to say anything about that. Were you farming in Eastern Europe, or were you farming pre-modernization with medieval techniques? You could actually get away with farming with medieval techniques if you use the right medieval techniques. Me and my girlfriend were actually quite avid in like looking videos how to farm and stuff. We actually wanted to buy a small garden to farm stuff. Like, yeah. What do you mean, why? Yeah, they genuinely believe people are fascists coming. It's ironic because you also have there's an interview of like a French volunteer who loves Marine Le Pen who came to fight for them. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, what is the Ukrainian civil war about? Like, what's the opposition about? I don't want to elaborate too much on that because I feel it's a bit unprofessional talking about previous bosses, so I'd rather not. But you know, they were nice. Thoughts on European migrant crisis? So yeah, European migrant crisis. I think I kind of have sympathy for a lot of the African migrants. Like, you go on Facebook and you get these crass comments by like these kind of white nationalists who it's videos of like a ton of like African migrants like dead coming up to like you know, on the shore of like Sicily, and it's a bit like insensitive. You know, I'd rather us limit migration, but I don't want people to forget that there's a human element to people suffering. At people trying to leave the corruption in certain African countries. So it breaks my heart a bit seeing crass comments. People using the N word of like African migrants regarding the Syrian migrants. I think that's fundamentally very different because there's a lot of radicalization, and I feel like the value system is very different. But I think there's opportunity because I went to Morocco and the people were really nice, and I saw that there's potential for dialogue and for like their culture. Like you go to France, and a lot of people who are of Moroccan descent, they drink alcohol. They have respect for dissenting opinions and whatnot. So. If you want me to answer a question, please put at Blitz of the Reich so I can look clear, so I can see it clearly. Thoughts on East African community, man. Like, I don't know much about East Africa. I really don't know. The reason I specialize on Russia because I like talking about things that I'm comfortable with and things that I know. Okay, I'm not gonna pretend to sit here and talk to you about things that I don't really know that well. That's why I had an issue with the Finnish Bolshevik talking about Venezuela, because it was very clear looking at his video that he was talking about something that he didn't really know about. So I'm not going to fall into that trap. What do you think of Vladimir Putin's ban of Russian nationalism? What do you think of Russian nationalism being the Russian anthem being the Soviet one? I don't really have a problem with that. I understand why Russians like Putin. They need a hard leader after the time of troubles in the 90s. I think it's interesting. I like how he's incorporated Tsarist elements, mixed them with a bit of Soviet nostalgia, and incorporated the Orthodox Church into that. I think the Russian people do need that, but I do not agree with some of his more liberal practices that remind me of the autocratic nature of past Russian leaders. What he did good was his 2004 reform political law on political parties, which reduced the political parties because back then there were way too many. There were like 400. Anybody could make a political party. And that turned Russia into sort of a confederation of some sorts. But he started, for example, creating a vertical of power by creating, I believe, districts, different districts in Russia with governors or district heads or whatever that oversaw each district to centralize United Russia's support and whatnot. Thoughts on Trump? I disagree with Trump on some things, but I actually like him on certain things. I do think the United States has been taken advantage of in terms of trade. I think his foreign policy is actually kind of refreshing because he's not as he doesn't antagonize Russia as much, but at the same time, I think he does things in the basis of real politic and not like Obama. Obama, to me, reminded me of like one of my university professors who thinks very theoretically that, you have an international regime based off of liberal values and blah, blah, blah. And that if you use smart power, you can, like, it just felt a bit artificial. Thoughts if Russia could join the EU? Wow. If Russia could join the EU, I don't think it would benefit Russia right now. The only reason is if Russia could retain the ruble and remain competitive. But if it joined the EU in terms of the economic sphere, kind of like how the Czech Republic's done, then I could see it doing that. But another issue is I think there could be an exodus of a Russian population. I don't know if that would be healthy. Just to correct you on your statement on the USSR being socialist, socialism is a phase of society in which the state exists, but the generalized commodity of production is abolished. Yes, that's very true. But that's why I'm saying every state has a different way of doing that. Because obviously with communism, you don't envision having a state, or you don't envision having money even. But like I said, socialism is a means of achieving that. But if every state has a different way of achieving it. But they still have an ideological unity in how they try to approach things. Class conflict and whatnot. Centralization of power and economic command economy. USSR still had generalized commodity production. Of course it had generalized commodity production. Socialism is a phase of society but generalized commodity production is about. I see what you're saying, but I don't I don't think I agree with that assessment. How bad is the corruption in Colombia compared to Venezuela? I've never been to Colombia. My parents have, and like my grandmother was Colombian. Um, I don't think it's as bad as Venezuela. It used to be worse with the Medellin cartel. I know people that were in the cartel before, like, everybody in Colombia kind of has a story with the cartel. So it's quite corrupt, and you had the FARC, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, that was also involved. Which country has the best marches, anthems? I always liked Deutschland über alles. I think Germany has the best military marches. I really like how they incorporate the brass, and they're a bit slower, and they don't have so many vocals. I don't really like Russian marches except Glinka's Slavsia, or the war song, the da 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 dun dun da dun 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 dun. Like, I like that song from the Soviets, but I don't really like the Internationale. I don't really like the Soviet anthem and all those because they sound like operas to me. It's like, oh no 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 no. It's like, I like marches with a lot of brass and like a thumping noise, like boom boom boom. Yes, I'm aware of boot. Okay, if you want me to answer questions, put the hashtag, damn it. Ignore the left com. You guys are left wing, and I'm anti-communist. I'll say it very fervently, but I still appreciate you guys because you're willing to speak to me, and you're not going to talk over me. But what do you think of Simón Bolívar? I love Simón Bolívar. That is one issue that the opposition and Maduro agree on. There are two issues that we actually all agree on, no matter what. We all love Simón Bolívar, and we all think Guayana Esequiba should be Venezuelan. So I have already explained that yesterday. Oh, I love Katyusha, by the way. Na 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 na, you shut up. But it's sung by like a little girl, and it sounds cute. It sounds like adorable and stuff. And one of my favorite films from all time is a Soviet film, Balada o Soldate, Ballad of a Soldier. Great film. If anybody's seen it. What if Hitler cozied up to the West and played the anti-communist rhetoric and invaded Russia first? I don't think the West would have accepted that. Churchill was fervently anti-Hitler because he was challenging the balance of power that kept Britain on the top, and France was always their arch enemy of Germany. Do you think massacre of Katyn was a genocide? I've heard people say it wasn't. I don't like using the term genocide. I think it was a mass execution. Like, I don't consider, when I say genocide, it usually has an ethnic connotation to it, which is why I think I use it rarely. But it was a mass execution and a purge, and it was a severe human rights violation. So it was definitely something that was atrocious that was done, that was against the Geneva Conventions and whatnot. Socialism is when government does things, the more the government does, the more socialist-y it is. Maybe, but like fascism kind of is similar. What turned you from your wereaboo phrase? When I was a wereaboo, like, even though my mom's family is Jewish, actual Nazis approached me. And the more I spoke to them, because I was a bit of a lonely kid in school, and they approached me, the bit I realized that they were their ideology was a bit insane, and they thought really crazy crap. Like, one of them thought that like Hitler escaped in a submarine into the earth. And I was like, nah, this is not for me. And I just realized that I can't be a hypocrite and want freedom of expression while supporting an ideology that's fundamentally anti-democratic. So that's why I stopped being a fascist as well before. So, but my wereaboo phase, it's just like, I don't know. I went to Germany and I didn't really enjoy it too much, even though no problem with German people, but like, yeah. Debate the Finnish Bolshevik and Jason Unruh and maybe Bad Mouse Productions. Finnish Bolshevik, it might be a shouting match, and I think out of all of them, I could debate Bad Mouse Productions. He seems calm and tempered in stuff. Why did the Grand Columbia fall apart? It's not covered. It's just it wasn't, the institutions weren't there to really have such a centralized government, and pretty much one of Simon Bolivar's generals, Jose Antonio Paez, rebelled against him and pretty much created the Venezuelan government. And after that, there were rebellions everywhere else and stuff. So, thoughts on Japanese Communist Party? I don't really know them, man, so I can't really answer that. Sure, but my point is that socialism is not when the government does stuff. You can have a planned economy and it's still capitalist, at least in the view of Engels. Yes, but I'm talking about the ideology in socialist governments. If you believe a historical materialist perspective and that's what you're trying to achieve, even if you don't follow the step-by-step guide set up by Marx, I still consider that a proper an attempt at implementing socialism, at least from the Marxist perspective. What do you think of Corbyn? I don't like Corbyn much. Not necessarily for his domestic policies. I don't like him for his foreign policies. I think he's very dangerous in foreign policies. His domestic policies, I would respect Corbyn a lot more if he wasn't so iffy with authoritarian regimes. So yeah, sorry. I know you like him, History of Socialism, that's fine. Because you also like me. Alberto Fujimori was corrupt. I don't know too much about him, but he was quite a corrupt individual from what I hear. Thoughts on Bolsonaro? I've already covered this. I'm mixed on him. He hasn't done anything dictatorial. That's true. It's just really left-wing people, like with Trump and stuff. I like his foreign policy regarding Venezuela because I am a real politique person, whatever. You a fan of Pedro too? I don't know much about Pedro too. All I know is he became the emperor. He was the Portuguese king or whatever. He became emperor of Portugal and stuff. Like, man, I don't know. Like, Brazil's separated by like miles and miles of the Amazonian rainforest. We don't really have much contact with each other, even though like my ancestors were Portuguese and Brazilian. What do you think happens once we reach our current PC climax? Will the world get more PC or will it collapse on itself and we can accept our two genders again? Look, I am pro trans rights completely. I don't really give a shit what you do with your body, man. Kudos to you, or woman. I do think that it's gotten to the point where we're so scared of expressing our opinions. And since people are so scared of expressing their opinions, they censor themselves. And this is where the creativity of the human mind becomes impaired. It gets impaired. And I think that's very dangerous because that limits progress, that limits the progress of human intuition and stuff. I hope I'm making sense. Guys, please put at Blitz of the Reich if you want to ask me something. Internationalist and anti-imperialist elements. Sure, fair enough. History of socialism. Like I said, I'm not like the most versed in everything. Like, I own Das Kapital. I own some essays on early Marx stuff, but I haven't fully read them, and like I'm not like a Marxist. The Jew is Israel first. Big no to Corbyn. Yeah, of course. I recognize Israel's right to exist. Please answer this. Where is your video that debunks far-right idiots? Are you talking about the one about Jewish participation in the Bolshevik Revolution, Jacondo? Anti-democratic parties could participate in election games or they could be ostracized. It's hard because technically speaking, then Chavez's party was technically anti-democratic because he tried to get in power before with 2 coups. So I think once you actually put words into practice, you should be barred from running elections. So I don't think Chavez should have ever been allowed to run. I agree. Trans rights are fine at the end of the day. They still are saying they are either female or male. The issue is with people who say they're not. Yeah, people who say they're neither, they're just people that are, I don't know, seeking attention, or I don't care about them, but it's a problem when people get pissed off at me just because I accidentally call you a girl or a man or whatever, man. Like, don't be a dick to me for something that I obviously didn't mean. That's my philosophy. Yeah, they flagged the video out of being butthurt. Yeah, my video about Jewish influence in the Bolshevik Revolution was flagged by Nazis, mass flagged. I didn't get a warning or anything from YouTube, but I tried to appeal it, and YouTube denied my appeal, even though it's just a historical documentary. So that video, it was getting a lot of views, and then it just crashed. So that's YouTube actually, like, literal Nazis won. And YouTube actually kind of like was complacent in that. I don't want to say complacent, but they didn't really do anything because YouTube mainly monetizes all my other videos. So I can't talk bad about YouTube. They've done okay. Was Pol Pot a communist to your view? Yes. I think he was, because he was trying to implement. I'm not a Marxist either, man. I know you're not a Marxist. Chill. I know you're not a Marxist. You told me that. What will China look like in the next 100 years politically? A dystopian hellhole where people in Black Mirror look like they're living a paradise. I hope that answers. I'm trying to go through the comments. To be fair, those dudes really exist in the internet. Yeah, like, men cut their wieners off. That's what someone said. I've never met a trans person in my life. I dispute that, man. I would dispute that. You probably have. Most of us have. We just don't realize it because we're blind. And we're not. Honestly, I've gotten to the point where I kind of hate everybody on YouTube. I don't really like Sargon of Akkad. I don't like PragerU. I don't like Fox News. I don't like Finnish Bolshevik. I don't like Bad Mouse Productions. I don't like anybody. Everybody here likes a Czech, for the first post-communist leader of the Czech Republic. This guy starts with an H. I don't know much about him, man. Like, I'm not really involved in Czech politics here. I'm just making money to survive and entertain everyone. I don't like Russia Today. I don't like CNN. I don't really like anybody. Yes, the Paris Commune is a very interesting example. Yes, but I don't think the Paris Commune would have been sustainable, because remember, in the context of the Paris Commune, you had the Franco-Prussian War. There was anarchy happening throughout France at the time. I think it was just a situation that arose through anarchy, much like how the Green Peasant armies arose in the Russian Civil War. But I don't think by any means it was sustainable. Zhukov or Rokossovsky, because I think someone asked me, why do I have Rokossovsky? It's not necessarily his political beliefs that I support in Rokossovsky. I just like the guy's military strategies. His treatment of Polish people, that's different. I just have him in my profile picture because I started my channel first as an analysis of deep battle doctrine because I'd read When Titans Clash, and I was like, oh, now I'm an expert in World War II because I read David Glance's book from front to back, sorry. Havel, that's what I mean. That was the first Czech president. I don't know Mr. Metukor, but I feel like Czech people don't really like him, and Czech people find the situation to be more corrupt than Slovakia, but like, I don't really get into it. it had a top-down hierarchical structure, but it took advantage of like an anarchic situation, and it was it was a byproduct of anarchy, and it was unsustainable. They were like, yeah, I think I saw your video, History of Socialism. Do you like the Caspian Report? The Caspian Report does, I think he's all right. I actually do like the Caspian Report, but I haven't seen his opinion on Venezuela, so I can't really gauge in that respect. Because he doesn't view things ideologically. Caspian Report does things geopolitically, which I think is much more realistic and practical. People started and got angry. That was about it. Yes, Sherman is, but like me being a Southerner, I'm a bit biased with Sherman. I used to be like one of those guys back when I was younger, like, oh, the Civil War doesn't have to do with slavery and blah, blah, blah. But obviously it does have to do with slavery. But man, like I'm from the South. It hurts. Ideology is important, but the world needs more practicality than ideology, because practicality is focused on things that work. And pretty much what ideology insinuates is that the people that wrote these ideologies were perfect individuals that knew the intricacies of how life works, and they figured everything out. That's a fundamental flaw I have of ideology, that ideology presumes that things are figured out and that things are scientifically proven, or sciences. That's a problem I have with Marxism. That's why I think ideology, it's good because ideology lets you tackle things, but it's not a good way of providing solutions because it's rigid. I don't like Mexi because it seems like Mexi, because she made a comment about Finnish Bolsheviks post in Venezuela and supporting it and whatnot. TIK's video on basic economics, haven't seen the whole thing. I mean, he's onto something, but I do think TIK is a little bit like too much into the tax foundation and like Mises Institute. Like TIK to me sometimes feels like he's a bit of a libertarian, which I'm not really a libertarian. I really don't want to take this to diss TIK. I think he's a wonderful individual, though. I just, like I said, everybody has their biases, man. I don't want to pretend to think I don't want to pretend to be the guy who tries to take the middle ground for everything, because I don't. I have my beliefs as well. But I don't know. I don't think ideology does the service. I don't think it's a service to society as much as it used to be. I think ideology is just something that upper middle class people use to try to seem like they can figure things out. And I'm not saying you guys, but like I just think ideologues are just people that are a bit far removed. What if everything's ideological? Then freaking out, like everything would be chaotic and people would be starving, even including in capitalist countries. Like if we got people who thought like anarcho-capitalism is a solution, then holy Christ, God save us. We'd be living in the Wild West, but like horrible. How was Venezuela before Chavez? It was corrupt. It was dangerous, but it wasn't as. But you could still. There weren't shortages. You could still get by. The thing with Chavez is he promised social spending. He delivered on it, on these temporary social programs that sort of anesthetized people from the long-term implications of he pretty much bribed people. Okay, like Chavez pretty much like indirectly bribed the population. And there's actually a graph of public opinion polls, government public and opinion polls, and it correlates with government spending. Starts a YouTube channel. It starts okay, then he endlessly rants about LaSalle and gets demonetized. To be fair, dude, market fundamentalism is just a different. Yes, but that market fundamentalism is like the anarcho-capitalists. But the thing is, capitalism, in its sense, is the only thing that's really worked because capitalism is the only ideology, at least the only compared to socialism, that allows for very basic market functions to exist, like supply and demand. How can a government gauge the demand of its public? How do we gauge the demand of public in what the public wants? Yeah. I don't agree with austerity, though. I think the Germans have been very mean to Greece. Germany has kept a trade imbalance in Europe, where Germany exports, because here, La Salle. Oh, La Salle. I speak French. I don't know. Okay, so this is my perspective of the world. I'm a political economist in my own right. In university, I studied political economy, and I see all these different countries in the world that are trading with each other, right? In order for a country to export, another country needs to import, right? Trotsky actually had anarchist tendencies, I believe, from his early writings. He was against the democratic centralism of Lenin initially, and then he jumped the bandwagon and he pretty much became a democratic centralist, Leninist, whatever. But he originally had concerns. Anyway, so for a country to import something, another country exports, right? Because it's a limited market, a global market. And there is data to back up this point that the more a country exports, the lower unemployment is in that country and the higher the output and productivity levels are, mathematically speaking. And what Germany has done in the EU, it's pretty much kept its exports level up. And that's caused the current account balance to remain positive, meaning they have a trade surplus. And this is also due to the fact that Germany hasn't had high government spending compared to other countries. So what this does to countries like Greece is it makes it very difficult to lower the deficit and improve their Germany completely used the euro to its own advantage and killed Greece and Italy. Completely agree with that. Completely agree. So I feel bad when people call Greek people lazy and they say that, they need to privatize certain aspects, but the Greek situation hasn't been alleviated by Germany's rigid stance in not converging not fixing or recalibrating the trade imbalance that's kind of maintained. Greece needs to get out of the euro, and in order to secure its economic, its sovereign monetary policy, it needs to devalue its currency, which would make its products more competitive in international markets, which would maybe undermine Germany's trade surplus, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Ben Bernanke did an article of this, the head of the Fed. I wouldn't call the EU socialist. Man, socialist, capitalist, and fascist are the most overused terms in society, like, it's insane, guys. Let's chill out, man. Let's chill out. We're all people here. We're all friends of Blitz of the Reich. The euro is way too strong for Greece. I agree. Privatizing everything doesn't make everything more efficient, but making everything public, nationalizing everything doesn't either. That's why I'm saying there's nuance in this. That's why I'm saying ideology is bad in a certain extent. We have to be practical. If making an institution public works, great. If it doesn't, we have to experiment with privatization. Also, Greece, what Germany should do for Greece, it should do bonds that are linked to Greek GDP growth so that Greece doesn't default on its loan repayments. I did this in a debate in university. I said that we should create a financial instrument where bonds are linked to Greek GDP growth, meaning that if Greek GDP growth is good, then then the bond interest accrues according to the GDP rate, meaning that the Greeks are able to maintain loan payments and stuff like that. So sort of like a variable fixed, a variable interest rate, but based on GDP, not necessarily on interest rates in the Eurobank. Because of depletion of natural resources, maybe. I obviously I don't know everything, guys. Undemocratic ideal. I know. I understand. I don't know if a fascist party, like I said, if a fascist party doesn't deserve to exist, then certainly a Marxist-Leninist party cannot have the right to exist either. Like I said, history of socialism. I don't necessarily agree with Corbyn's domestic policy, but I can tolerate it. I get it, but I just don't. I really don't like the guy because of his foreign policy. If I could debate anybody on YouTube, who would it be? If probably the Finnish Bolshevik, because I'd kick his ass in terms of my knowledge of Venezuela. Yeah, I saw his video today, and it was such a rehash of Russia today. It's like so easy to counter. Bad Mouse, I debate him for the sake of the fact that I think I would have fun with him. I don't agree with him pretty much in everything, but I think he would be a reasonable sparring partner. At least he doesn't seem to rehash, Russian state-owned news outlets. Yeah, I've heard this pedophile allegation. I really don't like slandering, doing slander to individuals. I don't find that appropriate. I don't like mixing my public YouTube persona and private life, and I don't think other people would appreciate me doing the same to them. Yeah, his AVI, the mouse. Anyway, is U.S. working class moving over to the republics? So why? I think the Democrats have become the elite. I think the Republicans are also part of the elite, but I think the Democrats have taken more advantage of this status quo. Like they haven't had to fight for electoral gains as much as Republicans have. So even though the Republicans are still kind of part of the elite, they had to resonate more with the local communities more. Natural resources being controlled the highest bidder, finite. It depends, Juanson. Depends on the terms. I don't want a monopoly to form, Juanson. So if there's a monopoly, I don't want private monopolies to form. Public monopolies are also dangerous because what happens, like in Venezuela, you have an authoritarian dictatorship that controls PDVSA and can purge dissent at will, like in the 2002 oil strikes. What is a version of socialism and democratic socialism? Well, socialism arose in the aftermath of French Revolution. So whereas democratic socialism seems to stem from Marxist thinking that, that the historical materialist perspective, whereas just run-of-the-mill socialism was just an outcry of intense industrialization in the 1800s. Well, I don't think Cortez is a social democrat. Thoughts on Bernie? Like, I actually don't think he's like that bad. I don't really agree much with his I don't like how he frames some of his policies, but I do agree with Bernie because he actually has a lot of overlap with Trump, at least in terms of realignment of trade, bringing jobs back to the U.S. and stuff. Wipe out the entire. What is your solution to the upcoming ecological disasters that are set to wipe out? Man, I don't know. I don't know because these problems are multifaceted and can't be answered by a 24-year-old who does YouTube videos. So I'm not going to waste my time or your time answering existential questions regarding solutions to the human race. I don't think I have enough experience or knowledge to answer that. Any other questions? I'm getting tired here. Whoa. Lightheaded. Why are we here? We are here because we are products of evolutionary Buddhist transcendental processes. So I might do now. Let's talk about a bit about my future with this channel because this has gone for 2 hours and I'm like, it's tiring. I'm tired a little bit, So I said yesterday I'll probably be doing a actual documentary, like a short documentary on Venezuela, the crisis in Venezuela. I will also then be doing a collab with Quill and Ink History regarding the Great Schism of 1054 because I think that I believe that's important because it pertains to the rise of Russian Orthodoxy. So that's related to Russia. I'm going to be covering the theology of that. So the Great Schism of 1054. I just finished my Finnish-Russian diplomatic relations series for all of you to check out. I'm also going to be I might do a philosophical video on the human nature and innateness to want to wage war. I think that's I might do that. And then I will do Operation Bagration, hopefully, because I've actually written the script. I haven't touched it in months, though. In a month. But it's about 20 minutes long so far. I think Operation Bagration is going to be an hour long. But I'm going to release it in parts. And then I'll release it all together in one video. Oh, Blitzard of Oz, the great and wise. What is the secret to immortality? To be free. Hitler did nothing wrong. That's the equivalent. What about more videos criticizing the left? Yes, I'd like to criticize the left, but I don't want to be the kind of guy that's just criticizing one camp and not the other. And it's expending a lot of energy. And I don't want to create drama, even though it's fun. And it gets me more views, which is a bit sad. Instead of everyone watching my academic videos, y'all watch my live streams and my rants about like this, BS. I've never heard Red Ice TV. What is the meaning of life? To be happy. Do you know the Russian Rulers podcast? It is fantastic and Russian Rulers. I will check that out. I don't know it. Do you think that is possible to eliminate war? No, unless we find another means of introducing chaos to a orderly world without having to cause war. A video on PragerU, man. This isn't like a political commentary. Like I wanted to make this an academic channel, not necessarily like PragerU. It's not even worth it. Like far-right conspiracy theories. Oh, far-right conspiracy theory. Nazis. I don't even bother. What else? Someone asked me why I was in Czechia. Czechia. Sorry. I came here because I teach English at the university and private companies, and it's a cheap country and it's closer to Eastern Europe. So I thought it would be nice so I can get more organic sources regarding Russia and stuff like that. Do I follow any philosophical doctrine? I love the pre-Socratics, and I love the way they analyze life, the way life is formed, especially like Empedocles and Anaximander. I'm a pre-Socratic at heart, you know. So I have a very like spiritual view of life. Philosophical doctrine, though, at the same time, I really like Thomas Hobbes. But I think I'm an empiricist. I'm a British empiricist as well, and I love the analytical school of philosophy. Why did the Bolsheviks hate religion? Russia very conservative because of reaction. Maybe I think Russia's always been quite conservative, even under the Soviet Union. I think conservatism wasn't annulled during the Soviet times. Yes, Czech Republic is Central Europe, but practically speaking, I speak about areas that used to be the former Iron Curtain, and Czech Republic is Western Slavic, but it's still Slavic. I don't say Eastern European as like a derogatory term. It's just a catch-all term that I think is easier. You know, I'm not gonna. When I think of Central Europe, I think of like Germany and Austria and Switzerland. All right. So yeah, I'm going to be doing those videos again, just to wrap things up. Everyone, thank you for all being here. I'm not done yet. So don't go. I'll probably be doing, Hugh Hefner. I will probably be doing more live streams like this. I really like talking with you guys, like expressing my viewpoints to you all in a more real-time setting. I like the interaction going on here. I'll be doing that more. I probably will be doing a video on Venezuela, but I'm not sure yet if I have time. Here's a link to my Discord. If you would all like to join my Discord, right? My Discord, everyone. Then I will be doing my collaboration with Colin Inc. History regarding the Great Schism of 1054. That's going to be interesting medieval history, just like my videos on Kiev and Rus. I will then be probably doing a philosophical video on war, maybe. Short video, but maybe yes or no. And then after that, I'd want to do one on... I want to do one on Operation Bagration and whatnot. If you all want to give me suggestions on the Discord so I can list them. I try to respond to all my comments on YouTube, but there's so many that I kind of leave kind of shells, like very basic comments. What is it, Fike Topa? Also, I registered my company today. Ooh, my business, my YouTube business. Why? Because I am planning on writing a small book, simplified maybe, of Russian history to give a brief history of Russia, which I will write in Amazon, of course, because I am a pleb when it comes to book publishing. What books do I recommend for ideologies in World War II? World War II, When Titans Clash, that's a very good book. What else? I always read like World War II research papers more than anything. I'd recommend books on Russian history because you get to understand the economic, social, and political implications that military history doesn't really dig deep into. I would recommend Russia History by Gregory Fries, even though it's very economics oriented. And it's hard, man. Like, there's so many books. I read books by Richard Sakwa as well. I didn't study. I went to the University of Edinburgh. I did political science and philosophy, got a Master of Arts. But I did courses in European history in the same university, and I did history of Christianity. So I did do history courses. But I did mainly Russian politics and dissertation on Russia, on terrorism in Chechnya. So my plans for the future is I'm probably going to make a website for my new business. It's called Maskirovka House. I'm planning on making a non-governmental organization, a think tank. I'm making a think tank that focuses on Russian foreign policy and Russian business and Russian politics and Eastern European politics. So keep an eye on that if you'd like to go on there to read articles. I could always use writers, but obviously I don't have much. I don't really earn much right now to pay much, so that would be voluntary. However, in the future, if I can get ad revenue from the website, I would happily pay some things for certain articles. But if people would like to help with that project, please feel free to go on the Discord. Because I will admit I am earning money now on ad revenue from YouTube, but that's YouTube. That's I'm not going to use that to for labor vouchers, and I'm not going to use that to funnel money into my think tank yet. Do you ever wear a kilt walking down Princess Street? No, I didn't, but I saw a lot of people do. It's more common for like formal things. So doing the think tank will be associated to the channel. I'm going to be writing articles, so if anybody is interested in at least giving me their perspective, I'd be happy to give a shout out or whatever. Eventually, I'd obviously make this paid if I earn enough from ad revenue. But like I said, I'm a small YouTuber. You can't expect me to be funded by George Soros. Going to be doing the book where it's going to be an illustrated book. So it's going to be kind of not a comedic book, but it'll be an illustrated book that's going to give a very brief but fun and well-explained history of Russia. Do you think capitalism would be replaced? Probably. Once we get the technology to replicate, or like a replicator from Star Trek to replicate resources, I think there would be no point, but people would still like to have private property and things. I didn't see Sargon's video. I'll probably see it. But to wrap it up, does anybody have any more questions, things, and whatnot before I wrap things up? People are joining the Discord more. Woohoo! Like I said, looking forward to Operation Bagration. Please keep tabs on my community posts. I post on my community posts a lot. What number am I thinking of? 7. Yes. I think everyone chooses 7. Do you have any degree in history? 1, 2, and I can. No, I didn't. I don't have a degree in history, but I studied history in the University of Edinburgh as like an elective course. So I did European history A and B. No, I did European history B. France is. Oh, I never answered the yellow vest thing. Yellow vests, I don't know. I feel like it's a bit. It's like French people are very economically conscious, and the fuel tax is supposedly good for the environment, but people are pro. It's really contradictory because French people, I feel like they act a bit. Not all French people, but some French people act arrogant when it comes to the environment, and I'm like, what the heck? These fuel taxes are good for the environment, and then like. Anyway, so I think that's to wrap up the live stream, everyone. Like I said, gonna be doing a couple videos. Looking forward to Operation Bagration. Also doing a website for my think tank where I will post videos from this channel there, and I will be writing articles probably, and I will be writing a book. This is all very long term, and as you can see, my face looks like it's just aged 20 years. So any more? You didn't answer the second question. Sorry, man. What do you think of France? France is all right. It's okay. I don't have problems with France. Except they're socialist. I'm joking. Anyway, everyone, glad to see all this participation. and stuff. So, goodbye, everybody. The stream will be over. Another 2 hours, yes, but I kind of want a beer and I want to eat. I'm very hungry. I might do another live stream soonish because you guys seem to like it. Hoping to see more. All right. Bye, everyone. Ta-ta.